So I'm going to start and want to welcome everybody. Happy New Year. I'm going to still say that until I don't run into somebody along the way. Can't believe how quickly the time has been flying by already, but thank you for being today. This is John, Marion, and Joe Casey, and Rob, Amanda, and I had been meeting just to teeing up this meeting with all the meetings that we held last year, where there's some things that really want to be able to present. I've sent along the almost completed brochure along with a timeline. And if I can ask you to maybe just share your screen, but before then, if Joe Casey or John would like to make any kind of comments before we head into this meeting.
I'd love to, Mary, and then
Thanks,
John
Joe.
probably would too. But Happy New Year to you all. The team has done yeoman's work at this point to get to where we are today. It's exciting, I think. This is our year. This is the year we're going to get this bid in place. The team has really crafted an outstanding plan that you're going to hear the timeline on. But it's now time to take the next steps about soliciting signatures and things of that nature you're going to hear. And so thank the team for their active support. We're moving in the right direction.
Thanks,
I'd
Joe.
just like to reiterate what Joe said. Happy New Year to everybody. And I can't thank everybody enough for putting the time that it takes to, the laborious time that it takes to really carve through this. And I'd like to thank Mary and Ann, especially for guiding us through this, because without their assistance and Ann, all the information that you've given us and leading us down this path is going to bring us to where we are now, which is I think a very difficult part, which is to rally all of us and see if we can get out into the street and spread the word and get the signatures. So Ann, I talked to Ann last week after the meeting and tried to figure out a good strategy, as well as all the things that were put together leading up to this regarding strategy. So I'll give it over to you guys at this point, because we're going to need your guidance.
Thanks, John and Joe. Your leadership as co-chairs is greatly appreciated. I'm first gonna go to Amanda for Mass Development. Mass Development is our funding source and has been so supportive and been part of all of our meetings and guiding us and really kind of behind the scenes talking about the time frame and who's doing what and how, how do we continue this effort? Amanda, do you want to just say a couple words before I pass this on?
Just quickly to reiterate, thank you to everyone for kind of sticking with this process. I know it's not easy and it's iterative and it's tough. There are a lot of tough conversations, but I think we've gotten to a great point. We've got a great brochure and has what I think, based on my experiences with other bids, a very realistic timeline to share with you today. And Mass Development's looking forward to continuing to support this in any way we can.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you again for your support. I'm now going to turn this over to Ann, who's going to walk us through the brochure. Ann, is that right? Oh, you're muted, first of all. Thank you.
I think after 3 years, I would have stopped doing that. So you all have seen the brochure. I will, Mary, I think you have to, no, I guess I can do it. Mary, that was all sent to everybody ahead of time, right?
It was emailed and in the meeting invite.
Okay. Can you?
You are co-host, so you should be able to hear.
Can you see my screen?
Now we can. Right.
Okay. Well, just, I guess a number of us have had the opportunity to really review this a bunch of different times. I'm hoping that, I think that we have probably, there were some comments. I think we've captured the comments. There's one final round after this meeting that I will take any additional suggestions, hopefully nothing major, just if you see something that's really weird. in this brochure back to our designer, and he will then be able, Rob, you've asked me for a printer's copy, a high def. This is not a high definition copy because it will be too big and won't be able to send it around by email. But when we have signed off on this, which I hope happens at this meeting, Rob, I can send, Todd will send to me and to you the printer's version that we can take and have printed. So you all have seen how this folds. We've incorporated some of the suggestions about highlighting some of the landmarks and elevating the street names. I think we've made the changes to the frequently asked questions. Hopefully you've all had a chance to, there's nothing new in here that you haven't all seen before. That's the cover. It's going to be a trifold that will fold into a regular 8.5 by 11 six-sided trifold. We've got rid of the torch that you all wanted to get rid of. Joe, we've got your name correctly and title correctly captured, and a few little typos that thankfully Amanda caught. We changed out a couple of the pictures and it substituted some new pictures in there that I think reflects the vitality that you want and some of the services that we'd like to feature, and some of the personalities of Brockton that I think you want to try to capture. Came up with a graphic for the fee structure, and then listed everybody on the steering committee. Does anybody have any overall comments? Other suggestions with this? I'm not going to walk through. I'm not going to walk through the
think
the whole
opening
brochure.
I think opening it up for comments from folks would be great, Ann.
Yep, that's what I'd love to hear. Anybody see anything or have any comments? Please don't suggest a major rewrite at this point, or my designer may jump off the bridge in Greece where he is right
Cindy-
now.
Cindy, go right ahead.
Yeah, so the only thing right away, because I was involved in putting the street names on the maps for the parade, and I just want to make sure that Bartlett Street, as it calls here, isn't currently Father Kenny Way.
Yeah.
Good catch. Thank you. That's a good one, Cynthia.
Where? Okay, Bartlett Street is, what is it again?
Father Kenny Way, Kenney, right, Mary?
That
EY?
is, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was renamed at one point.
Gotcha. Okay. John, that may require you, John Fay,
Yep, I could change that.
that's going to require you giving me a new map, like today, hopefully, with that change
No
on
problem.
it.
Chris Cooney, your thoughts?
It looks it looks pretty good. I mean, when I see maps, I love to, add features and whatnot. Frederick Douglass Way is a kind of a key thoroughfare there, as is School Street.
In
But,
Montello,
of
but
course, yeah, north-south
Right.
is Montello and Warren. But I think it's good.
Thank you, Chris.
because mostly we're kind of focusing on the outline, right?
And
Yeah,
we're trying
is
to
that-
be descriptive of what the boundaries would be.
Exactly.
Not call out every single street in it, or it just gets
Exactly,
too
Right, right.
cumbersome.
Yeah.
Now, Jason Hunter, so Jason, this is your first meeting in I think a while from the beginning. Somehow we left you off, but I know I sent this to you. Thank you first for joining us. The Mass Hire owns the building that they're in, just up the street from Chris and I here. So your thoughts about this, Jason?
I mean, at first glance, only being, I kind of just took a real cursory glance. It looks great off the top. No initial comments as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
what constituted the logos that are there?
It was your suggestions from this steering committee.
Oh,
Um,
the dissented
a couple of meetings ago.
blurry to me.
well, they're going to be a little blurry in this version, Chris, because it's not a high definition version.
Right.
But
Okay.
in order, if I couldn't send this to you as a high definition version because it would be too big. So this will all be, this is a low definition version that you're seeing. It will be a high definition version when it goes to the printer. The whole brochure will be.
How about others, Ted or Michael or Vanessa? Great, thank you, Michael. I got the thumbs up there. Ted, your thoughts? First of all, Ted, you're muted, but number two, your building is looking
I
amazing.
know,
So
yes.
Well, wait till we get the first level done, the storefronts, which have been a real problem in terms of supply, but
Yeah.
momentarily it'll start to look really finished. So thank you.
Yeah.
This looks terrific. Very professional, really sets the tone the way we'd like it. So congratulations, well done.
thank you.
Thank you.
Vanessa, thank you. I see your hearts and approval of this. You know, again, the journey, the journey that we had this past year, it was a journey. Lots of vital discussions, and a lot of that had been captured through our YouTube. And again, we're not pushing it out there, but it for those as we get to the next stages. So I think if I can just have I'm going to ask someone from the committee, and I won't do it myself, but someone could just make a motion to accept this brochure so it can be formally adopted and then sent to the printer.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Great. And all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Great. I think that is unanimous. If I'll just say, if anybody is opposed, again, thank you, Anne, and your designer, and John, and Amanda, and Rob, and everybody who's weighed in on this. So thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
and I really appreciate your thoughtful comments, because this brochure will be your sell piece.
Mhm.
So you're going to be able to use this and all be working off hopefully the same sheet of music when you go out and have that conversation with property owners. So when you can talk about the services, you can talk about the frequently asked questions, because those, from my experience, are the questions you're going to hear most often. So familiarize yourself with the approach. Certainly put it in your own words, but this should give you some ammunition.
Right, thanks, Anne. Let's go over to the timetable, because I think that really is the next step for us as we move forward, because I think that's the drum roll, right? So now what? Okay, this great brochure, but as we all know, communicating and getting the word out in this community has its difficulties. And one of the things that when we were getting folks to know about the Business Improvement District, mailings went out, and a survey went out, and like several times, and it was difficult to try to really get folks to weigh in. So we're looking to try to put effort into this. And Anne, I might have you make this just a little bit bigger. It was sent out to everyone, but if you go to the bottom, there we go. Oh, perfect. You got it.
Does that work?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
And why don't you walk us through this? Would be great. Thank you.
So you have received two different timelines. This one I think is the most relevant to you. There's a timeline of the second phase of this project, which, and this basically talks about the signature campaign, but it also gets into some of the legislative approval stuff that isn't really all that important right now. And you have had sent, Mary, we went over that in the last meeting that we had, and so you have that information. But then John, Marion, and I had a chance to really kind of think about more specifically down to, what does this campaign strategy for signatures really look like? And what are the tasks at hand that both us as technical support staff and sort of the backbone people who are, trying to support this committee, but also what does the committee responsibilities look like? So, just so that you know, in the order of magnitude, this is not a small project. It's not the largest bid out there in the world, but it's not the smallest bid. It's kind of right in the middle. So you have about 400 parcels within your district. You need to get 60% of the property owners within that district that represent 51% of the value to sign a petition that will then be taken forward to the city, to the public hearing process, and then a vote. This particular chart just talks about the signature campaign itself. So what will accompany, you'll have this brochure printed as your sell piece. And then you also have a petition, which is about a 5 or 6 page sort of a technical, just a summary of what will be included in your brochure will be included in the petition. And the cover page of the petition will be your signature page. So you will be asked to go out and get the signatures, your own signatures and others, to sign on that signature page. The original of that signature page will be kept, I was assuming, with Mary in some secure location. We'll make copies of it so that if Mary's building blows up, we'll have a digital copy of it. But we will be submitting that original signature page with that petition that goes to the city eventually. So that's just the mechanics of how this works. So what Don and I talked about, and what Rob has talked about, and we've all talked about in this committee, is during the signature campaign, we need to be pretty organized. We need to delegate assignments and assume some assignments of calls that will be made to your property owner peers, maybe recruiting some additional volunteers. And John has suggested that we might consider doing block captains, which could help us organize that work. And then periodically checking in to track our progress, to troubleshoot any problems that will come up, which they will, if there needs to be individual meetings. And sometimes I have found that there are, particularly with the larger property owners, there's a desire to have a conversation with their legal representation, so to answer any questions they might have, and I can be usually helpful in that process. But how we organize ourselves to go out and have these conversations, regroup every couple of weeks as a team to check our progress and to help people if there are any problems, or you need to have support as you go out and make these calls to get these signatures. That's kind of what this timeline lays out. So right now we have a database that we are looking at and analyzing the signature eligibility. What will happen is we'll make sure that whoever if it's an LLC or if it's a trust, you know who the right person needs to be to sign that, and you have that backup documentation for the city clerk when this goes to her or him as a petition. You're going to create a visual map so that we can say this is what's happening with the signatures. Either you've got them signed, they're in progress, or nobody's made contact with them yet. And it'll help you kind of create a visual cue of where you are. We're going to print the brochure and the petition materials, so those are available to you. We'll mail to all property owners. We'll distribute to all the businesses and attractions. Get it out in digitally or however you want, Chris. I'm hoping through the chamber. Just really try to make sure that we have everybody in the loop and informed. Rob has suggested, and I think it's a great idea, that we inundate people with information, that we kind of do this maybe as a form of monthly reminder mailings or postcards, or here's where we are, here's where the campaign is right now, so that there's a progress report and you can start to show, how you're making progress towards your goal. We talked about assigning block captains, and this is John. John, you may want to get into that conversation a bit more. And then kind of how we would progress through this signature process. My suggestion is that we secure, our own signatures first, that this will, before you even go public with this as a campaign, so that people on the steering committee, the city, our low-hanging fruit, hopefully, get signed on. And that gives you a great launching place for your conversations out with your peers.
And let's do a little stop right there and get some input, and maybe start with John and others about this timeline, what you've said so far.
All right, so based on our conversations leading up to last week, and then following up with Ann a little bit, I was just envisioning, it's a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of boots on the ground, and so we discussed a strategy to simplify it a little bit. First of all, I agree with, starting with the committee. We've been discussing this for, months and months and months. And I think that, for us to go out as a committee, that's a good start. Our signatures first and then to go out, I think is a good start. We're gonna have, from what I understand, a list of the stakeholders, names and numbers. So they're actual folks that are the ones that are the decision makers, so that we're not talking to one person and then find out that that's not the person, because we only have a limited amount of time. So that list is going to be in the process in this timeline. I think endorsing it's great because now we go out there. I had a little conversation yesterday with somebody and envisioning having the brochure. It actually went well. I think those frequently asked questions are going to be very helpful. This is going to be a great selling tool. I thought that if we break it down into either the segments of who we are, meaning retail or owner, landowners or renters or banks or professionals, if we break it down that way, or make it even more simple and just taking our block. So if we were to take, my store, my building, the folks around me, I know them the most, even though it's been said I know everybody, I don't. We just take that block, and then that's the first responsibility. Go out there. It's going to really take, I like Rob's idea of just bombarding everybody, but honestly, it's going to be the boots on the ground. It's going to be that face-to-face that's going to get that signature. So from that point, I think if, expanding past the block, the ones that we exist in, to go and say, well, okay, I might know somebody on this next block, and go over there, and rather than to take the entire block, just because I might know 10 out of the 20 in that block, to assign somebody that's a little bit more aware of what's going on around them. So that there comes the block captain. So it's like a double layer. Take your initial area and then maybe reach out to somebody that that has an area too, that's not on the steering committee. And that's kind of pretty much what we talked about last week.
Yeah, and I think there's another layer too here. As you all, as a group, look at this list, this database, this property owner list. If somebody's your brother-in-law, or if you are golfing pals with somebody and you really have a great relationship, I encourage you to go through this list and claim somebody that you really feel that you could make this best sell, to, and then layering on this block captain idea and also you want to make sure that the right person is making the right ask. So it may be, let's say, Joe, you feel comfortable talking to another bank president or CEO that you would say, we are supporting this. We hope that your bank will support this too. So it's almost like making sure that the right person to ask is a peer-to-peer ask or a special relationship ask, that, as you look at this list, make sure you identify those people you feel super comfortable, talking to.
So let me weigh in just for a minute, because it's been mentioned a couple times that it talks about the list. So that list is in the Google Drive. John, are you driving still, or are you in the office?
No, I am in the office, yes.
Okay, because I was going to say if perhaps we can share the Google Drive with the list, because I think that's where we really need to have the input about how many people and who's going to divide and conquer. And again, it needs to be coordinated. So let me make you, where are you? There we go. Make you co-host.
I'm going to have to.
Right. Okay, just let you.
So I will stop sharing, right?
Thank you, Ann. Yep, let's, because I think is that an okay strategy? Do you all want to look at that list so before committing yourself, or at least knowing where to find the list, and then we'll put the strategy around these captains and things of that nature.
The one comment that we made about, the bit of homework that's happening right now is that it's sometimes you look at a list and there's a lot of trusts or a lot of LLCs or things like that are identified on that list. So people want to make sure, and that's not a super challenging task, but it's a task to go out and make sure that you have the right person signing. So that, and so we'll do that. That is happening now.
Great, thank you, Ann. Cindy?
Do you anticipate that there'll be an initial email or phone call to these people that we could set up appointments.
Yes.
Okay, and then the second thing I was thinking is, you know, we're zeroing in on the contact, right? But it may be strategic to, in some cases, if we think it might be a hard sell, to take a step out to who does that person know that we know? Like
Right.
one step
Yeah.
out of,
Yes,
you
yeah.
know, and get with that person and get the buy-in, and then that person could, you know, either come along or put in a good word or something. That might be another.
That's
Strategy.
absolutely true. And sometimes you're gonna find that, let's say you have a restaurant that's a tenant,
Exactly.
and that tenant may say, we're really excited about this. They may help you get to the property owner or be there to say, we will support our proportionate share in this building. We think this is really important. So yes, all of those kinds of strategies, as you look at the list and you look at the particular building, you'll be thinking about, you know, how do we get to the right person and how do we bring along, like if you're uncomfortable making a call by yourself and you want me to go with you, I'm happy to do that. Or you want someone else from this team to go with you, you know, you should go and have those conversations together, and particularly until you get more in a rhythm of doing these kinds of things. And once you do a few of them, that it gets easier as you go along.
No, I can
So-
sell
so-
it in.
So
I can sell
so
it.
let's, we have. a
Cindy,
couple
you're
more-
gonna sell all 400, we know that.
Let's do a
Cindy,
couple.
you're
Joffrey first and then Joe Casey after.
So this might have been mentioned, but you know, as you guys said, you're trying to get signatures of, you know, the decision makers. Just out of curiosity, so in the, you know, the fine print, so to say, who is considered an authorized signer? So for example, we're going around and getting signatures, you know, we don't want to be spending time getting signatures from people that, you know, I guess obviously there's an owner, you know, ultimately from everyone, whether it flows down to a trust or LLC, but you know, what does the paperwork say about who's an authorized signer so that doesn't come back to bite us in the butt? And then my second question is, you know, getting something signed on the list. Is this a piece of paper? Is this a digital list? Is this DocuSign? You know, is this a piece of paper where, you know, let's say I go to Irving's and talk to Dick and I give him a piece of paper and I say, hey, Dick, you know, XX print sign date on this blank piece of paper. How is this list actually signed? I know these are kind of details, but
Yeah,
No,
no, I'll give you a quick answer. The homework that's being done right now is to look at the list that's from the assessor's office. So you need that has to be your base list. And then the committee is researching through the state, through the secretary through the secretary's office of who is listed as an appropriate signatory. You don't need everyone. Let's say it's a trust and it's got 3 names on it. It's Jeffrey and Jason and so and so. Any one of those people can sign. So you will have that as backup, you know, for you as you submit this petition to the state. So you'll know what signatures are appropriate for you to get. Now, the page itself is a physical document. It's the front cover of the petition, and it will be a colored sheet of paper, and you will have it will be clear on this. You'll have a parcel name of that owner or the owner of that who is appropriate to sign. So you'll have that physical signature, and they need to be a physical signature.
It can't be DocuSign?
It doesn't, it's silent on that, in the enabling legislation. It says it's got to be an original. So the way that we have always done it is to get a physical signature and for each parcel. So let's say you own 5 parcels, you need 5 signatures one for each of the parcels.
Yeah, I think DocuSign's efficient.
Okay. So
But are you using Bill Galvin's that
Yeah,
site to
yeah.
determine? Okay, just wondering.
Joe Casey?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I just, again, foundational point that we want to make sure that we're all on the same page on, and is the signature requirements here about 51% of the appraised value, and it's 60% of owners that
It's
represent.
yeah,
right?
right. It's 60% of the real property owners. So
Parcel.
every block and parcel number is a separate signature.
Yep.
So that there's a whole number there, and then there's that represent 51% of the assessed value. So usually
Right.
that assessed value threshold is actually an easier number to reach.
Right.
Because then it's just tracking down the actual numbers of people who need to sign. So typically what towns or cities have done is to try to get a little more than 60% so that should there be any question of a signature, you have a little bit of a cushion when you go into the city, the city. This petition with all of these signatures will be delivered to your city clerk. Your city clerk will then, the first step is the assessors will review the signatures compared to the block and parcel map that you have, and making sure that, and then attest that threshold has been met. And then that petition and the attestation from the assessor's office will go to the city clerk. And then the city clerk will do his or her review of the petition for its completeness with all the signatures. And then they'll sign off on the petition. Then the next step will be the city clerk will make a date for a public hearing. That public hearing notification goes out to property owners 30 days in advance and then advertised twice before the public hearing. And then there's a vote of the city council, and the vote of the city council needs to be taken within 45 days of the public hearing. In most cases that we've set up these bids, that vote can be taken the night of the public hearing. So as we get further into this process, we'll want to coordinate a vote, identify a city councilor who will be willing to take that vote. And we will want to also have a strategy around how to do the public hearing so that there are supporters there who will speak in favor of it. So that's a whole nother timeline strategy that we'll get to as we get a little further down the road.
Could I just chime in for 1 second?
Yeah,
Yep.
because
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, finish up.
maybe I'm very slow on this, but I just think it's very important because John Fay sent around the list, and the top 11 properties represents 50%, right? And so if we got the top 11 property owners, which includes the city of Brockton and the Commonwealth, and is that enough? Or do we really need 60% of the 400 parcels? So we
Yes,
need
you
over
do
200.
you need both. You need 50% of the assessed value, and that represents 60% of the real property owners. So every block and parcel number is a signature that represents 51% of the assessed value. That assessed value figure is pretty easy to reach in most cases if the larger property owners are in support of this concept, but you have to have both.
Right. So that's the real kicker for us.
Yeah.
That's probably over 200.
It is over
Absolute
200, but
signatures.
if you look at, the way I would approach it is to look at that list, look at those properties
common
that people who own multiple parcels, and start with your own committee, because you have a really good committee. You have a lot of properties represented in here. There's a lot of parcels, and then take a look at where you are. And then go from there around assigning the calls to make and taking the calls on. It is a process. We've laid this out over a course of like 8 or 9 months. That's pretty aggressive, but you could get there if you're organized and you're all willing to take on a little bit of this work. It's going to take a lot longer if 2 people are doing it by themselves.
So I think that the list is by far, in a way, the most crucial point for us, because if that list is accurate, it actually gives us meat. If it's kind of accurate, we're already wasting time coming out of the gate. So the list has to be verified as accurate first. Then I think that if we, like I said, just keep it simple. There's 18 of us on this committee, take out it. Let me go back to what Joe said. If you take the city out, so we're looking at 200 parcels, is that what it is?
Probably, right?
Yeah,
No.
John Fay, I think you can answer that, can't you?
Not off the top of my head. The city owns maybe about 20 properties.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
How many?
Just off the top of my head, maybe around 70. including tax
770.
title takings and, there's vacant lots, there's things that the city has to take on because they are abandoned.
So that leaves
Yeah,
three
if I
hundred
could
and thirty.
interject real quick, this is Jonathan.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
When we're talking about 400 property owners, it's
No.
400 parcels,
It's 400 parcels.
right? So we only actually we don't have 400 distinct owners.
Right.
That's
So
right.
does the city count as a signatory?
Yes, they do. The city counts, the BRA counts as a signatory for, but just to reiterate, no matter, each block and parcel number is a separate signature.
Right. So it looks
So-
like we're maybe talking about 100 distinct owners as I look at the list very quickly. Does that sound right?
I don't know it off the top of my head, Jonathan, but John Fay and I, that was done early on, just describing the number of distinct owners. We'll get back. Well, I think my recommendation is that list, we do the due diligence on making sure that we have the right names that on that list for you. And then we can do that analysis of who are the owners, because John has done a lot of that work. I don't know it off the top of my head either, but and I think it would be better to say, here's the list here, because we did that analysis to try to get to the aggregation of properties, who owns multiple parcels, how does that all come together? So we have that information we can share as you really start to break this down.
And before I go to Joffrey with your question, Jonathan, did you have any follow-up after that?
No, I just the only reason I brought it up was to point out the list may not be as heavy as we're describing.
Right,
because
right.
It's not, it's
Right.
because they're going to be
it's
like,
smaller.
you're
So-
going to have
Yeah.
a much smaller number of actual property owners,
Yep.
but they may own multiple parcels.
And that went to John
Right.
Marion's question that he raised, is this list accurate? After this meeting, we'll get ourselves together to really kind of comb through that. Joffrey?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of say what John just said. The actual list of signatures we need is probably closer to 100. But my question is also this: is there a time frame on when you have to have the signatures by? And what I mean by that is, so for example, let's say we have the first signature, this week from all of us, right? Is there an expiration on that? Can you say, at some point, can you? Let's say we get the last signature 6 months from now. Is there a point where, signatures or dates are considered valid or invalid just based
Well-
on time? Like, they're obviously not good forever, indefinitely, but I just want to be clear on that too, because obviously we don't want to be submitting signatures a year later and have someone say, well, these aren't, signatures, they're not good indefinitely. Nothing is.
Well, you're right, they're not good indefinitely, but there is no expiration date on the signatures, so and depending on the district, it can be fast or it can take a while to get there.
What's been timeframes at like other places, like on average? Like, I don't think this is going to take a month. I think maybe 6
No,
months.
it's not gonna take a month. I think
it's 6 months to a year from, just to, by the time it's
I
actually
think
said and done.
I think that's the average.
Okay.
For
just
a
wondering.
district of this size, I think it could, and that's why I've laid out a timeline that's about 8 or 9 months. I think that's what's gonna
Okay.
take.
So all good questions, right? So since we last met,
John's got his hand up.
oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
So one last thing to fall back on what Jonathan said, what Joe said, now that, it seems a little clearer in the sense that, it's not 400 names. Okay, there's 18 of us on this committee. If you break that down, and everybody grabs 10 names, that automatically gives us 180. And I always break down sales real simple. So once we get the list and then we develop the real hardcore strategy, I think that visual mapping that you were talking about, it's like, okay, here's the visual map. Here's kind of like what John Marion has. Look, it takes a pretty good segment there. It's all right, but there's only 10 signatures in there. It's not that bad. And then people see, and then if it looks like we're crossing into, we can see that. Or if it looks like, we've, gotten a hold of a brother-in-law or a really good friend that's in another section. I think if we, at the very beginning, if we kind of agree on how this breaks down, then it's all about getting out there and hitting the street.
So maybe the most helpful way would be for John Fay and myself and Mary to take, or Mary's team to to take a look at the list. And again, the list comes from the assessor's office. So this is really key because this has to be official. So we'll get the list, we'll do that, we'll analyze the signatories, and then show you, who owns what, because we can sort it, and rather than you all trying to sort it your own way, we can lay that out for you. And I think, John, we've already done that a couple of times in different fashion. So we'll pull that back up so it's not confusing.
Right.
We'll try to make it as
Yes,
clear as possible.
The one that I had shared was just the most cleaned up version so that we can use it as. I will go back in and reassess everything and.
Yeah. John, maybe you and I
This is a little
can,
bit older data.
yeah, we want to get them, we want to
According
get,
to the previous version, I have about 123 different parcels that need to
And I,
make that 60% threshold.
and I think, John, just and I'll go to Chris and then to Kevin Brower, but it was to give you a sense so you can take a look at the list. We've been talking about this list for a year internally. Now you have a chance to see this, to comment on it for today, but it will be cleaned up. And then, so Chris Cooney.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And in the event that someone signs this for approval, then sells their building, does the new building owner have to then sign, or what is the grace period there?
well, the buildings get sold every day. So the official list is the where'd you go? You disappeared on me. So the official list is the there you are, is the assessor's list, but there will be times when the properties will change hands. And so the way that we've worked it, because there's no guidance to this in the enabling legislation, is that we work pretty closely with the assessor's office, and so that there's a certain, as you get towards the end, you'll go back and look at everything to see if anything has changed hands, and then you will attempt to try to get the new owner signatures if that has happened, even if it's not reflected in the list. But at some point, all the communities have gone through this, has agreed that at a certain point, you just say, this is the list we're going to use as of this. This is the final list we're going to use, because you could go to a public hearing and a building could change. So that's why you kind of build in a few extra signatures, so that in case you have a circumstance like that, you try to anticipate it.
It's a
So
good
if you
question.
try, so it's a process. So the faster you get it done, the fewer changes that are likely to happen. So that's the best answer I can give you with this, because it's always like right at the end, you could have a property that might change hands. So you're trying to stay on top of that as best you can.
Kevin?
And then, Chris, that was my question too, so that was a good minds think alike. But my other question, I just wanted to clarify, if an owner owns 5 different parcels and they're not connected, is it 5 different signatures, or is he signing once for all?
No, it's 5 different signatures. It's a signature for each parcel.
Okay.
And
Even if it's connected, Kev.
even
Okay.
if it's connected, that doesn't matter. If your property is comprised of 5 different parcels, then that's 5 separate signatures.
Okay.
Lots of good questions, and I think this is why we had this meeting, because I'm certainly going to cultivate more questions that come along the way. And Ted Carmen had sent an email to us. There's a couple other little changes, so thank you, Ted, for looking at the brochure. The idea is really to tighten this up so we can really start getting that printed. In addition to that, we'll be probably, and I won't look back at the timeline, but let us work on this list. An email will be sent out. And then again, I believe that Joe and John had said in the beginning, asking all of us who own property or property owners to sign first as the steering committee. In all fairness to you, Jason, because I know that you haven't been on some of these meetings, but I'll set up a time to review with you.
Yes, please, Mary.
And then I do believe that we come back together and just strategize who can be a captain, who can, additionally work on some other aspects of who's the right person to contact, and divide and conquer. Cynthia.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm excited about this because seeing the list and already it's like, let's get this. My thing is, when we get the revised list, and I know we can sort it all out and clump, the owners together, but Another strategy would be, I would wonder, do we prioritize which ones should we really focus on first, right? And then also within the group, we could easily look at the list and say, yeah, I know I could, communicate with this person easily and get them to buy in. I'm thinking about like the Desjardins brothers. They own multiple properties, and I have a lot of experience working with them with
Right.
the rental assistance field.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Not that I think
And
I'm the right
that's
person.
exactly right, Cindy. I think that the first thing to do is to look at this list. In order of priority, I think the first thing to do is get your own signatures.
Mhm.
The second thing to do is to look at that list and identify who do you feel most comfortable taking on this list. If it's your husband or wife, take them and get the signature.
Right.
If it's somebody you have a business relationship with and you feel comfortable taking that, do it. And then the third will be to assign, block captains and where you are and how you want to approach it. And I think there's always the preference to, if somebody has multiple properties or multiple parcels, try to get them on board first. You're probably going to run into some resistance somewhere along the line. I know you will. Don't waste a whole lot of time, at least initially, with trying to change somebody's mind. Just keep going, because you'll start to build that momentum and they start to see, sometimes they're maybe more recalcitrant in the beginning, but they start to see support for this idea building. And then it might be an easier ask as you go down the road. And it's frequently going to be more than one conversation.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that.
We're running just a little bit, about 10 of 9, and I don't really want to necessarily rush, but this is also, I'm very cognizant, appreciative of all your time. What I would, let us reconvene. That's Ann, John, Rob, Amanda, myself, and I'm missing somebody. But let us get that list together. I do think we can do some things that are fun. We can grab coffee at Elvera's and have a small group. We can go to Brockton Beer and either have lunch or beer after.
Cabo Verde?
And that's right.
The Cabo Verde.
Yes, I'm an investor in them. So I love their it's Cabo Vegan, and there's lots of different places to go, but let's make this fun. I would say the Downtown Brockton Association will take the bill and pay for us to get together, but I do think that's the strategy. Let's get these small groups together, and then it will all be in the Google Doc. Who's going to be who's going to be the contact, and then we get together and reaffirm those along the way. So that's those are going to be the steps. We'll reconvene. We'll get our own signatures, and then go from there. Anybody have questions about that process?
No, but I have a request.
Go ahead.
John Fay, if you could send me that map with the change on it, like ASAP. I've got to get it to the designer. I'll look at anybody
already in
else's
your inbox.
comments. Thank you. I didn't look at my emails yet, but if anybody has anything else, there was that one phrase, Mary, you guys, we want to take out. In the frequently asked questions, there was one sentence that we're going to eliminate.
Yes.
And we'll do that. There was one other typo that I found.
Ted Carmen's name in the steering committee listing, he just sent us an email. He sent 2 emails about some comments. So when we get off of this, in fact, maybe if you stay on for a minute, Ann, after this meeting, we can go over that.
Let's go over it. And then that's done. Don't have an epiphany at 11 o'clock tonight, because my designer will kill me.
Joe Casey.
Just quickly, do we have enough confidence on the list cleanup? Can we think about scheduling something 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now?
Yes.
How
Yes.
long will it take to get that list kind of perfected?
No time. Oh, John, what was that?
A day max.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, does that mean going back to the state and confirming the signatures? I thought that was an intern project that you had somebody working on, Mary.
we do.
That takes a little time.
Yeah, I would think.
But let's at least, we can do some preliminary, to Joel's point. Maybe we take a look at the preliminary listing and just start allocating. That's going to take time itself, right?
Yes.
So I have an intern who's working on contacts for each of the property owners, email, websites, cell phone numbers, their firstborn, I don't know, all of that information that we can. And so let's, to your point, Joe, in terms of scheduling, let's do a touch base maybe in 3 weeks and see where we are and give some time frame with that. Because I know that the staff is working on that listing like this week, next week. So.
I just want us to
That'll-
be cognizant of the, February school vacation.
Oh,
week is
right.
Probably
Right.
make sure we avoid that week, I guess. And I think 3 weeks is okay. It's probably the week.
That'll
before.
give us time to try to get this final printing thing to the printer. I'm waiting for John, your law department's going to take that, give you some feedback by Friday, so we need to get this stuff printed and things like that.
So February 16th, Thursday, 8 a.m.
Got it.
Perfect. And Anne, Cindy made a comment, just the steering committee, correct, who she works for. Neighbor Works Housing Solutions is the correct title. So the 16th, 8 a.m. In the meantime, we'll have some updated list. If anybody is interested in so Jason, besides you, I know we're going to have some sidebar conversations, but if anybody else is interested in kind of chatting about the list and identifying, who you'd like to reach out to, if it's 2 people, that's 2 less people that somebody else has to take on. So I would say contact me, and then we can go from there. And yes, I will meet you at Brockton Beer or at Cabo Vegan or the Brockton Business Cafe or Peruvian Restaurant or Il Vera's or oh gosh, they're all around. So yeah, I know I should be about 10 pounds heavier than I am right now, but yeah. So thank you,
All
everybody.
right. Yeah,
This was
thank
a
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you
Thank
want
you.
to stay on, that'd
Yeah,
be
let's
great.
stay on and go
Thank you.
through this.
All right.
Joe and John, thank you for your leadership.
Thanks, everybody.